Hey guys, and welcome back. Today we are going to literally step in a pile of dog poo-poo. Not because I want to, but I think we should address it if we're going to talk about everything else. We do still eat dog meat in Korea, but it's not the problem you may think it is. And if you're a fan of K-pop, K-dramas, the Korean wave, you probably don't really want to ask Korean people that because it's rude. But on the other hand, even Korean people do not understand the scope of the problem. And I was able to interview a really special guest about this issue. So you guys know the show Friends? I don't know. Everybody on this planet has probably seen at least one episode of Friends. Well, you know, like when they roll the credits and it says Bright, Kaufman, and what's the other guy's name? Crane. Well, I got to interview Mr. Bright, Kevin S. Bright. Yeah, one of the creators of Friends. So it's this like big shot Hollywood guy who actually did this really cool documentary on the dog meat industry. Now, I know what you're probably saying is like, oh my God, another dog meat type of documentary. Is he trying to like be so like anti-Korean or like, you know, what is this? And actually, I found it very interesting because it was extremely factual. And even though there's been lots of kind of videos, documentaries, or people trying to bring more attention to this industry, this I felt like did a really good job with just showing the process of the farming part. Like, I've always wanted to avoid this issue because I always felt like this is such like an overblown stigma of Korea that people just use to try to be racist against Koreans. And then on the other hand, like crazy people in Korea just like to trump it up and say like, oh yeah, it's just part of our tradition. Everybody eats dogs. So it just seems like both sides are just so out of whack. Nobody really cares about like eating dogs. Like it's not an issue. Like let's just ignore it. However, apparently there are way too many dogs though that do still get sacrificed for this industry. And it is something that I think we should confront because it's not a lot in the sense of like, it's not enough where Korean people should be embarrassed or ashamed of themselves because it's not like at the level where there's enough consumption where most Korean people should feel like they should be ashamed of it. But it is at a level where it is so many dogs that we should really, like this filmmaker says, like the guy who made Friends says, we really need to ask ourselves, like, do we want to do more? Do we want to take more steps? And there are concrete steps that we can take to start to convert and move out of this industry. So what's the number? It's about 1.5 to 2 million dogs a year that actually get eaten. And that number has gone down. Apparently it's been about 3 million from before. So that's still a lot of dogs that do get eaten. And so in this interview and in the documentary, we're going to go over a lot of the myths. So let's take a look at the interview.
Thanks, Kevin, for joining us here on the Seoulite. So you're Kevin S. Bright.
That's me.
And most people would know you from the hit show Friends. So you are, when the credits roll up, the Bright, when it says Bright Kaufman and Crane Productions. So
Correct.
You were not just the producer, you were like the creator, like the executive producer on this show.
That's right.
Why don't we give the sense of like what your role was on this production? What were you trying to set out to do? What story were you trying to set out to tell? And what do you think the story was towards the end of the program?
Hmm. Well, I think when the show started, the story was it's about that time in your life where you move out of your house for the first time, you're finding your first job, you're in your 20s. And at that point, you usually need a roommate or a group of friends to support you. So it's that transitional time in life where your friends become your family. And then I think the end of the show, what it had to say is friends grow up, they get married, they have children, and they're still going to be friends, but it's time to enter a different part of their life where they're not going to just be hanging out in a coffee shop all the time. It's time to move on and take greater responsibility. And so for my own role in it, as one of the executive producers, my partners were both writers, and I was in charge of the entire production. So from the design of all of our sets to the theme song, to the music on the show, to the editing, to the production itself, directing, that was my department.
Oh, wow. Yeah, everybody knows that theme song. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people have that in their mind, that show, as part of their growing up. Like, it really did match that, getting out of the house, being part of their next transition into adulthood. So I think it's really good to have that part in people's lives. And now you've embarked on this new project, but in between this new project of the documentary with the Korean dog meat industry, which we'll get to, Nureongi, you've worked on a variety of other projects. You've taught at your alma mater. You've taken a more educator approach, it seems, to this documentary, instead of more of like an entertainment approach, with like a Hollywood type of TV program. Is that what kind of a story that you wanted to tell? Like, what story did you want to tell with this documentary?
Well, I tried to make it a little bit entertaining by finding some things like the wonderful, as we say, shit dog song that's in the film. So I tried to make it light when I could, but this story attracted me because the first time I went to Korea, my wife and her partner Tammy run a organization called Dove Project that takes dogs from the dog meat industry in Korea and brings them to the United States and finds them good homes. And I just tagged along with them because they were doing business in Korea. And just what I found was all this confusion around the dog meat industry. The majority of the country does not eat dog meat, and therefore knows very little about the 10,000 dog farms or the number of dogs slaughtered annually. And so I felt that this was a great story to tell and to provide all the information in an unbiased way, so that there could be a meaningful discussion started amongst the Korean people about where dog meat fits in today's society.
Yeah, a lot of people here don't really realize that there's a big scope to the dog meat industry. Is there
Right.
is there a difference between the way that you started the project and the way that the project ended up? I understand that it took 4 years for this project to go from start to finish. Was the story different, especially now that hearing that you were just kind of tagging along? Like, this wasn't even like an objective that you had.
No, it started out as a short film, so it really wasn't the objective that I had. But as I got into the story, I just found that in order to make it unbiased and in order to cover all the bases around the dog meat industry, I just needed to go to Jindo Island. That was a separate trip, because in the same society that eats dog is also an honored animal. So there's that disconnect that I find very interesting for the film. So the medical doctor that's in the film and the veterinarian, And then you see people saying and swearing to you, no, it does have medical benefits to it. So there's a lot of stuff to clean up. And I think what changed for me most from when I started making the film was, I probably had a little bit of a preconceived notion that people who would be in an industry around dog meat were not very sensitive people. But what I found for the most part is everybody I met in the dog meat industry was very gracious to me. But the ones that I really felt for were the poor farmers, which is the majority of these 10,000 dog farms in Korea. And you see these farms, the dogs are in terrible shape. They're in above ground cages with piled high excrement underneath. And you can tell their businesses are going downhill, and they really don't want to be doing this anymore. But they're stuck in poverty, and they also don't know anything else to do. So that's where I'm hoping that the government can come in eventually and help these poor farmers.
It seems like you hit upon like some really salient core points that were very important for Korean people and the rest of the world, but especially Korean people, because it does start here if you want to.
Yes, only Korean people can decide the future of dog meat.
Right, and that's the thematic, the statement that you're really pushing is like, this is the time for Korean people to decide. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was very interesting. Like, first of all, like what you just mentioned with the dogs, like going to Jindo Island, respecting the dogs, like kind of like even going from a conceptual level of like how Korean people view dogs. Like you mentioned in the documentary, on the one hand, even the language of dogs, on the one hand is like loyal, kind, and revered. But on the other hand, just attaching that word "ke," dog, as an adjective to something, it immediately can turn something into like an F word.
That's right.
So there's like this kind of like dichotomy that we have, and then you're going to Jindo Island because that dog. So let's talk about this dog, the dog itself. I think that you uncovered a very interesting mystery we've all had of like, well, what kind of dog is eaten? And it's apparently a blend of one of our most revered dogs, the Jindo dog, and a mutt. So it's like yellow in color. So we've always thought like it's this mystical, mysterious kind of like Cretan mutt dog
something less than, something that's only good for eating. It can't be a pet. It's not suitable to be a pet. And what my wife and I have proven, even together, we adopted 2 meat dogs while we were in Korea and brought them home as puppies. And these are 2 of the best dogs we've ever had. I mean, we've had mixed breed, we've had pure breed, and these dogs are incredibly loyal, incredibly smart. And for all the dogs that we've ever had, they hold the record for housebreaking. They were so fast; it was really unbelievable. Yeah,
so they're normal dogs.
They're pet dogs now. They have made the they started out meat and now they're pet. And the thing is there's no difference between pet dog and meat dog. They're the same animal.
So yeah, let's go over some of these myths that you really did uncover. And I thought that was very smart with some of the on the street interviews that you had with real Korean people to show that you're not really like attacking Korean people. Like you're really uncovering like all of the things that we are kind of even afraid to ask ourselves. And who's going to go and into the mountains and trying to uncover the truth about like what goes on in the dog farm and link it up with like the dog association? Like nobody is going to go through all of the steps that you did to link up all of the chains of this dog industry. And so I thought it was really cool that you were able to also just conceptually like the person on the street. So some of the myths, so let's just go over them. So there are some people who are like, oh, there's only a dozen dog farms.
No, there are 10,000 dog farms, and only 2,000 of those are government sanctioned dog farms.
And you showed some of them like kind of remote, and even if they're supposedly inspected, the inspectors are like, oh God, it's so far away. Like, I'm not going to do it this year.
Yeah, exactly. There's really no infrastructure to support proper inspection of these dog farms. There's just not enough personnel to go around.
And then because people thought there's only a dozen, a lot of other people thought like, oh, maybe only a few thousand are killed each year because there's not a lot of people who eat these dogs.
And you see the reaction on their faces when I tell them up to 2 million dogs are slaughtered annually for the dog meat trade.
And I think you juxtapose that with there's 6 million pet dogs in the country.
No, what I've been saying actually is that 2 million dogs are slaughtered annually. So here's my math, and because there's no way I can count dogs in Korea, but this is a little bit of an assumption, but I think it's an educated guess. So if 2 million dogs are being slaughtered, there has to be 2 million dogs behind them that are entering the part where they're getting ready to be slaughtered. And behind them, there are 2 million dogs being born, new puppies. Yeah. So that's how I come to 6 million dogs in the pipeline of the dog meat industry at any given time. And that's why when we talk about the end of the dog meat trade, we have to take those 6 million dogs into consideration. What's going to happen to them? How will they be treated? And I think we show some possibilities in the film with the Tosa farm that we went to, where you saw all of those large meat dogs, not the Nureongi, but the large meat dogs that are just on this farm living out their day. I mean, those are very big dogs. They're not going to live long. So there are solutions and possibilities. And, I sent an article to Korea today from a New York newspaper about how dogs are being, our police officers have been suffering a lot of trauma here, particularly in cities like New York, where there have been a lot of shootings going on. And they're bringing dogs into the police station to calm the policemen. Oh. So I know a Nureongi could do that too. So, there are many ways that population could be reduced without necessarily, everybody thinks, oh, you're going to try to euthanize them all. No, it doesn't have to be about that.
Right. A lot of people justify and put it out of their heads by just saying there's no different, or there's a difference between these dogs. There's a pet dog and there's a meat dog.
Yeah. Well, I think what they're ignoring when they say that is the world standard in the relationship to dogs. Dogs have evolved to be part of our daily lives. They live with us as our companions. They work for us. They provide service to people with disabilities. Now, I don't know of any cow, chicken, or pig that can do any of those things. So that's usually the argument. Well, what's wrong with dogs? What about cows, chickens, and pigs? Pets are animals that can live with us humanely and sanitarily in our homes. And dogs and cats are the only ones that really can do that. I just think that the whole argument of what about dogs, pigs, and there are people who don't eat meat. There are people who don't think any of those animals will be slaughtered, but dogs are part of our human fabric now, and that's the difference.
Right, and you even brought like a professional dog expert saying that there is no difference between the two.
That's right. That's right. A professional dog expert that's very well respected in Korea.
Yeah, and then we do make a difference between meats. Like some people who say like, oh, well, what about, like you're saying, like we eat other meats. But if we ate every meat, then why don't we just eat human meat? I mean, we make differences.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of comes down to that. You draw a line somewhere. There's an ethical point that you reach where you can if dogs were just running wild everywhere anymore, nobody had them as pets, okay, it might be understandable, but that's not the case. And there are so many pet dogs in Korea now. I mean, that's really a newer phenomena. And I think one of the things that pet owners are struggling with there is not being prepared to realize the responsibilities that come with owning a pet. This isn't something, it wasn't what I thought it would be. I think I'm going to let the pet go or take it to the dog farm. No, this is a commitment till the dog has to naturally pass away. That's what you're doing when you adopt a dog or buy a dog.
Another myth. This industry is really regulated. It's sanitary. If it's at a restaurant, it must be okay.
Well, at the industrial dog farms in the film, I wanted to be fair, and you see a distinct difference between those government sanctioned farms and the poor dog farmers that are also featured in the film. The poor dog farms are absolutely a sanitary disaster. There's no question in my mind about that. It really makes me nervous when I was there, even thinking that somebody might be eating these dogs. I mean, that's how diseased they were, skin disease all over their bodies. I mean, the thought of somebody eating that is just nuts.
And you did some tests, like scientific tests on it.
Yes, yes. And lots of bacteria, disease all around. And in the industrial dog farms, obviously it's cleaner. They treat the dogs much better, but there's still no inspection, and there's still, like, for example, I don't know if they say they don't use antibiotics on the dogs, but if you talk to the veterinarian, in the blood samples they've taken, they found different results. So, to have a food industry that, first of all, is not classified by the government as food and allow it to be unregulated and served to the population is just wrong. And that's one of the biggest problems around dog meat that has to change. The government.
Extremely clear how you pointed out that the gray zone is, it's not food, but once it's butchered, it becomes food. So that's where the gray area is.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think actually when it gets to the restaurant, it becomes food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Up until like it gets off the truck, it's not food, but hey, once it's in the restaurant,
once it's in the it's on the menu, it's food.
So weird. So weird.
Yeah, it is.
But I think when Korean people see that, they'll understand that, because there's so many laws like that in Korea. So I think that was really great that you did that, because that would be eye-opening for Korean people. It's based on our tradition, that myth.
Mm-hmm. It's based on well, that is, well, it is true. It's based on tradition, but I think it's a tradition that it has a foundation of poverty in it. After the Korean War, Korea was the poorest country in the world and had no good sources of livestock and protein. And that's when dog meat started to become really popular. Dogs are easy to breed. It's a good source of protein for sure. So I think anybody can relate to, if you're starving, you kind of do what you have to do. But Korea is one of the top economies in the world now, top educational systems, plenty of great food around. And yet there still seems to be all of this confusion and argument about where dog meat fits in.
Because I'm no like Joseon era scholar or historical Korea scholar, but I don't think that in the imperial palaces there was dog meat on the menu. Like you said, I think it was like a post-war phenomenon, like a real poverty in a modern era. And you have to kind of like really argue, like, at what point is like, what is tradition or what was just like modern day survival?
Yeah, and look, there are traditions that last for hundreds of years, but eventually society changes and we become smarter. And fortunately, we don't do human sacrifices anymore. And it would.
And straw shoes was the tradition in Korea. I have yet to see somebody wear straw shoes on the street in Korea. Where is that?
You know, I didn't see that in all my trips there either. That's a new one on me, straw shoes. That's good. All right. Well, traditions need to change.
It does.
Change with the times. That's it.
One of the big arguments for continuing to eat dog meat is that it gives you energy and vitality.
There's no scientific proof of that. You know, I think it's a psychological thing. Here in the United States, we kind of think the same thing about chicken soup, that it has many medicinal powers to cure your cold, but that's just the common cold. We don't claim that chicken soup aids surgery or makes you more virile or has any of those other effects that cannot be proven, or at least have not been scientifically proven.
In the last myth, modern execution techniques are painless. The dogs are no longer beaten or hanged, so it's humane.
Well, I can't say 100% that no dogs are beaten or hanged anymore because, you know, since they passed the law outlawing the electrocution stick, I don't know what's going on the dog farms there right now. I'm kind of worried about that. But the electrocution stick itself is absolutely very painful. You are frying the insides of the animal while it's still alive until it dies. And as you see in the film, and I tried to minimize it as much as possible because I knew it was very difficult to look at, the dog is electrocuted for 45 seconds. And then after he pulls the stick out, you see the eye, the dog is still alive. So they have to give it another jolt. And I've witnessed, you know, to prepare for this, I've witnessed the slaughter of cows, pigs, and chickens. Nothing is like this dog slaughter. It's horrific. It really is.
And I don't even think in the film you gave us that full 45 seconds. I didn't realize it was 45 seconds. That's horrible because even that was really shocking.
Yeah, I showed you just about 10 seconds and then I put a graphic up that said 35 seconds later, you know, because I didn't want to make people look at there were so many versions of that scene about getting it right, about how much people could stand, about when it would, you know, give me backlash because, you know, I put too much in. So I think it was important to see it, but no, you only see 10 seconds of it in the movie. And it does, for those listening, I want them to know that it comes with a warning right before that scene.
So when you were going around Korea, looking at different aspects of the dog farm industry, you were saying that people weren't really necessarily doing it for the money. Like if it was like the drug trade, you could see like people willing to cross lines for a lot of cash, but it wasn't even for a lot of money. But what did you see about, like, what did this do to people, even if it wasn't for a lot of money, just for survival? But do you think it was different? Do you think like people were affected differently from like pig farmers, chicken farmers, cow farmers who also have to slaughter? But do you think do these people seem different to you?
You know, I can't, you know, first of all, I always do things in an unbiased way. So I didn't go around Korea and talk to chicken and pig farmers. But what I would say is the majority of the money being made in the dog meat industry, it is profitable, but it's only profitable to those 2,000 government sanctioned dog farms, which have a population between 900 dogs to 6,000 dogs on each farm. So those farms are making money. It's the poor dog meat farmers. The majority of those farms are run by people that are trapped in poverty. So that's why they're still doing it, because they have nothing else that they know how to do to make a living. And so this is where, again, the government can start with these farms that are wrapped up in poverty, and provide the owners with an opportunity to change their business and to be supported in that change. So there were some former dog meat farmers that we met that started growing blueberries. One dog farmer had a water truck that, bringing water to different locations. And another farmer started a junkyard. So there are possibilities in terms of how those farmers could be helped and taken out of the dog meat industry. But again, what's going to happen to the dogs? It needs a plan. It's very complex. You can't just say farmers get out of business. Where are those dogs going to go?
Right. But even on a micro scale, you showed and you proved that it didn't take an exorbitant amount of money to get a farmer to transition right away.
No,
like
that's
you did it yourself without a government program. You just did it.
So much could be done so quickly. I think a lot of times, this is where we come to the realization of so much money being, there's many military concerns in South Korea that a lot of your government spends a lot of money on, and our government spends a lot of money on. And it would take one iota of that money to solve the dog meat problem in Korea. And that's, what's frustrating.
Well, there is one part of this story, though, that I felt that, if I may, didn't really make it in. And that was kind of like on the demand side, the actual consumer, the customer.
Mm-hmm.
But you probably did see it when you were filming.
Mm-hmm.
Because from what I noticed is that the people who do eat this, though, they kind of eat it almost as like, not necessarily, they say it's for taste, they say it's for tradition, but when I see it, I think it is, they eat it for almost as if they're getting some sort of strange psychological high from it, as if they're gaining some weird dark power from it.
Mm-hmm.
They say it gives you vitality, as in like some sort of like sexual prowess, some sort of power, some sort of like energy again. And I do generally see it's kind of older men, and
that's
a
what
lot of politicians are fans of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like these guys that are battered every day, and they feel like they need something to kind of make them feel strong again after being like battered by the world.
I call dog meat the Korean cure for midlife crisis.
Yeah.
It's mainly consumed by men over 55. You don't see young people saying, "Oh, come on, let's get the gang together and go to a Boshintang restaurant." That doesn't happen. It's and you saw when I shot inside the restaurants, I couldn't find any women to interview. It's all men. So this is a consumer demand generated strictly by an older male population.
So in a way, I think that you did leave that for Korean people to decide, because that is Korean people buying it. So Korean people have to decide like what they're going to do about it. And part of that is, do we keep continuing to consume it? But a lot of that is like, why are you going to continue to like think that this is going to make you feel any kind of like give you an edge in society? And I loved how you had that lady who like was the owner of the restaurant like scream at the protesters, and she was saying like, you people like, the president Yong-geun, who's like a total
as
liberal.
President Moon used to eat here. No, which president was it, honey? Not President Moon. Moon. Oh, I forget. No, it wasn't Moon. I made a mistake.
President Yong-geun.
Yeah.
And and he's like, on the liberal side, but then also like on the way arch conservative side, like President Lee Myung-bak apparently is also a really big fan of it as well. So you have like people way at the top. So if like the president of the country is going to continue to eat it, so I think then people think like, well, then there's no hope. Like, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to outlaw this? They think that it's going to give them vitality, and they think it made them president, like it gave them superpower. Like, how do you, like, what are you going to, how do you do that? How do you combat that?
There's absolutely no scientific proof. And, you know, I can say, hey, you know how you can ask me, how did you become the producer of Friends? How did that happen? I ate string beans every day. String beans. Okay. That's my key to success. They give me knowledge and power. And if you eat string beans, you know, what does that mean? You know, nobody achieves anything without hard work. That's how you achieve. It has nothing to do with what you eat.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. So how can people watch your film, and what other activities are you having around it that you want people to know about?
And thank you. Well, my film is available free on YouTube. And I will, you know, the August 10th Bachnal is coming up. And so on August 10th, I'm going to be doing a YouTube live, and we'll be taking questions and answers well, I'll provide the answers. They provide the questions from the audience. And then I have a plan to come to Korea in October, or as soon as COVID gets under control and we all feel comfortable about getting in a movie theater together, and I'll be showing the film in a theater while I'm there and holding public question and answer sessions, and hopefully just meeting with as many people as I possibly can. I think it's really time. You know, there's a lot of organizations inside of Korea that are calling for the end of the dog meat trade. And the frustrating thing that I saw was none of them worked together. They all kind of had their own, they're all trying to achieve the same end, but they don't work together. And I'm hoping that this film can really be the point of everybody who wants the end of the dog meat trade, get behind this film, get together, use your strength, combining all of your forces, and start to make change happen. That's how it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's good. And you're the one to bring it together. You are the producer of Friends. You can get them all in one room. They can all be.
I am happy to take the role. I'm happy to take the role. I'm honored to take the role.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just amazing how like you went from that kind of Hollywood kind of to now being a real big social activist for change in this world. It's
Well, you know, I think what I found in documentaries is a way to tell meaningful stories. You know, not all of them are going to be like this. I've done 4 other documentary films, everything from a documentary on my father to a documentary on a young girl who is blind and autistic, and what happens when she leaves her blind school and enters the real world. So, you know, I've covered a diverse subject group, and what they all have in common is when I see a good story, I get inspired. And I also knew in making this film, I had the opportunity to make a good story that might also inspire some other people and ideally inspire some change.
Awesome. Well, it was an honor talking to you, and
it's great talking to you, Sean.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be there soon. So yeah, I look forward to meeting you in person. That would be great.
It's a really cool interview that I was able to do. Were these the same type of myths that you had in your mind that really kind of kept you from really thinking about the whole dog meat issue? And what would you want to do now about it? The same people who are pretty much making bad decisions and being all corrupt in this country are like the main customers of these dogs. Okay, so they are the people consuming this. You don't see like young people, you don't see people who like don't want to get some like, you know, power from a dog and like eat up a freaking dog so that they can go out and abuse more people eating dogs. It's like kind of like people with a tick in their head that I think are like the main people who want to eat up dogs like this. So, you know, I think there's kind of like a more of a psychosis or a psychopathic element to this dog consumer. And then a lot of the people who are stuck in this dog industry, yes, and I did say stuck, are looking for a different way to make money. So it probably won't completely disappear, but we can definitely shrink a lot of this industry because a lot of the people who aren't really making a living from it kind of want to leave it, but they just don't know how to get out of it. But there are other people who have found ways out of the dog industry. They're growing blueberries and stuff. All right, guys, so what did you think? I thought that was really cool because, you know, this guy made friends. It is like, I think, isn't it like $1 billion property? And yeah, all around the world, people have seen it. And now he's decided, just out of, you know, the passion of his heart, to try to make some sort of influence on the minds of people to try to raise awareness. And he said he was very careful to do it in a way where he didn't want to, you know, anger society or make any kind of like a, you know, cultural kind of, you know, indictment on anybody, but really make Korean people start to ask more of a time-based question. Should we do something about it now? Like, should we change what we think and feel and do about it now? And I think it makes a lot of sense that if we are thinking about policies that we can totally create now, it's definitely within our power. And why not? And like we said, we do not need to let these psychopaths eat more dogs so that they could be more psychopathic. That is on the menu for the Seoulite, okay? That is why the Seoulite wants to talk about this, because we believe that if you probably do a profile of the main consumers of the dogs, they probably have psychopathic traits and they probably feel like they can feed their psychopathic tendencies and then be more abusive to other people. Because when you really think about it, if somebody in their mind can justify eating a dog, what do you think that they can do to other people? What lines do you think they're more willing to cross with other people if they've already in their minds justified crossing all these lines by gobbling up a dog? Okay? So I think we should cut off the source of supply and energy for the psychopaths. And hopefully we will reduce whatever power and vitality they think they get from eating up these dogs so that they bother us less. They leave us alone a little bit more and we can have a little bit more peace. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.